Right, let's go.
Hello and welcome to this episode 13 of the Just Discourse Podcast with your host, Monotone Max, and the man with the lovely name, Matt Harpe. How are you today, sir?
I'm all good. That never fails to make me laugh, that one, mate. That's good.
Well, it's a good name. Strong name.
Monotone Max.
Oh, no, I meant Matt Harpe.
No, I like the one for yourself. It's a good epithet.
Exactly. It unfortunately describes my voice perfectly.
I like it.
Anyway, so today, the topic of discussion we decided to start at is a bit of an interesting one, isn't it? So it's a process by which males extend certain parts of their anatomy.
And this time, it's not what you think.
Yes, we're not talking about the old chaps, they're old lads. We're actually talking about leg extensions.
Specifically the femur. Now, the femur is the big bone that goes between the knee and the hip. And some people, in an effort to become taller, are inserting metal rods into their legs and extending it 1 millimeter a day.
Yes, that's mad, isn't it? So it says here, it involves cutting the thigh bone in each leg and inserting metal rods inside, and then over the next 3 to 4 months, the rods are lengthened by up to 1 millimeter per day via external remote control. Now that sounds, I don't know about you, horrific.
That sounds so goddamn painful.
Yeah. And what do you think is driving, I suppose, mostly males to do this?
So they want to be taller. The only thing I can envision why they would do this is that they would become more attractive if they were taller.
Right, and is this due to the Tinder swipe rate that is, if you're under 6 foot, basically you get zero attention?
Because you've got the Tinder amongst other dating profiles, but you can set people's, for anyone who doesn't know, you can set the height requirement for the type of spouse that you're looking for.
Can you actually? So I did not know that.
Yeah, and so women typically on those dating profiles will put a height of over 6 feet, because you've got the stereotype of a man which is over 6 feet or taller, wide shoulder to hip to waist ratio, earns X amount.
Yeah.
And
can you put that in there as well?
You can put the what you're looking for that.
Jesus Christ, people actually put that data in.
Which is when you look at the combination of, let's say 85% of women are looking for men over 6 feet. The average height is my height, which is 5'9".
Mm-hmm.
So that rules out most of the population.
Yeah.
So there's the majority of women looking for the minority of men. So there's going to be the phrase from the dark web is called the turbo Chad, who's the guy who has the height, has the shoulders, has the money. Mm-hmm. Which is, if you're ticking one out of those three, you're doing well. But if someone ticks all three, which is what these women are choosing for, selecting for on these dating profiles, that's like 4% of the population, that.
And then they're getting the lion's share of the.
So it's So if everyone were to be using these dating websites and following that algorithm, you look at 4% of the men getting 85% of the women, and everyone else just alone
fighting for the scraps.
Yeah, is the idea. Now, in reality, when people actually physically meet each other, that's not the case at all. There's everyone for everyone. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at just upon the criteria that people look for on dating websites, then the selecting pool is much smaller.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because you'd think with something like that, you'd have more options. But does it come down to the conversation we've had before? The more options you have, actually, the harder it is to make a decision, or the more acute you tend to be?
It's specifically for a dating app. Now, a dating app at the end of the day is a service. Mm-hmm. It's something that is tailored towards a consumer, and so it has to be streamlined and efficient. It's like Apple. The whole MO of Apple is as simple and as efficient as can be, because it makes it easy for people. People are more likely to choose that product over anything else because it's easy. The problem is that with Tinder, is this incredible app that everyone should be using, but it takes people away from being people and just turns them into just a commodity, a thing.
It takes them away from the reality of what's really there or in front of them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the things that people actually care about are, someone's smile, their generosity, their kindness, their compassion. None of that is on there.
Yeah, which you're not going to get from the Tinder profile.
Yeah, you're not going to quantify it. So it's the things that you as a person actually don't value are what is you're selecting for on those dating websites.
No, it's interesting. And, thinking about it is...
Just tilt the mic up a little bit, buddy.
Because of what we mentioned.
There, that's better.
There we go. Because of what we mentioned about, I guess it's like this in nature anyway, but the women tend to have a larger selection of who they are with.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess because things are going more onto these dating apps than, the old school way of, meeting someone in a bar or a club or something like that, it's... Is it forcing men to be more insecure with their appearances? Hence why surgeries like this are becoming more and more frequent?
Could be, because to put it crudely, women are the gatekeepers of relationships.
No.
Ooh, here we go.
Women are the gatekeepers of sex.
Of sex.
Men,
I beg your pardon,
are the gatekeepers of relationships.
Okay, there you go. Okay, good. Okay, so women are the gatekeepers of sex. Tinder, at the end of the day, is... it's a website designed to fuck. It's not like other websites which are like Bumble or Hinge or whatever, where it's a little bit more classy, as it were, or a bit more like human, as opposed to just being something like, let's get down and dirty.
Yeah.
So yeah, women ultimately decided from there. But women typically set the standards for sex almost anywhere. There's only few scenarios where they don't, but that's a different conversation, more to do with male to female ratio. But to your point, as a overall society macrocosm, yes, men will be more... If you're using a dating site as a man, that's quite a depressing prospect.
Actual dating site
And
rather than like a fuck site like Tinder.
Well,
Or
both.
Both,
Yeah. I mean, I've never used it myself,
Mm-hmm.
because it just seems really clinical.
Mm.
And it's like social media. It's like, that's not really you. It's like you have to meet someone in person to know who they really are.
Yeah, and that's my thing all with social media is, I don't use it. I really only use it to market my business and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I used to use it a lot when I was younger, when you were out with your mates and you take photos and stuff like that. But I suppose the older you get, you have to put yourself in a position to take the photos and all that type of stuff. And I guess you don't really think about those things. We're usually more in the moment, aren't we now?
Mm-hmm.
Than sort of taking a photo so we could show someone else.
Yeah.
So I don't really ever take photos that, unless I'm on holiday or something like that, something that you want to show the family and bring back and remember. I don't really tend to take photos that much anymore. So if you were, setting up a Tinder profile or something like that, I guess you've got to get all dressed up to take a photo of yourself.
Or just hold a fish.
Is
You've got the stereotype of the guys holding a fish because they go fishing.
Yeah.
And obviously that is a complete turn off.
Yes, I can imagine.
But apparently the guys who have pictures of dogs do quite well statistically, which is interesting.
I see that.
Because you're caring for something that is entirely dependent on you, and if that's a fully grown dog, that means you're responsible and you've cared for that dog.
Wow, you thought about it into that way further than I did.
Yep. What did you think?
I just thought, girls like dogs.
Well, that is true. I mean, women do like dogs as well.
Girls think they're cute, so look, he's got a nice dog.
But you do have.
But your point did make sense.
Yeah, but the difference in people though is that some people are dog people, some people are cat people. If you have a picture of yourself and a cat, it doesn't really mean anything because cats are largely independent.
Yeah, most people are. I grew up with cats and dogs, so I love them both equally like children.
Yeah.
But they are completely different animals for completely different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But some people just really don't like cats, don't they?
Some people don't like cats and don't like dogs. Do you know where the stereotype of the crazy cat lady came from?
Go on.
There's a phenomenon called toxoplasmosis, which is
That's a big word. What does that even mean?
It's toxic blood toxoplasma or something, but something that only affects cats. Now I'm definitely going to butcher this, but here we go. It only affects cats, and it happens when they ingest a rat that's carrying this specific parasite, which then makes cats sexually attracted to the smell of rat urine or something like that. And then it makes the cat go a bit loopy because of it. But then the cat's, I think it's the cat's secretions. Like if you've got a cat at home that is using a litter box, it produces an odor which then gets in the human's mind as well. So then they end up getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
But the sickness being that they have to have loads of cats. Is that right?
Crazy cat lady.
Is that right?
Right. So I've got Toxoplasma gondii. Does that sound about right?
There should be a mosis.
Protozoan.
Go on, yeah.
That causes toxoplasmosis.
Oh, there you go on.
Found worldwide, T. gondii is capable of infecting virtually all warm-blooded animals, but felids, F-E-L-I-D-S.
Oh, cats.
Is that a felid?
Felids, felines. Yeah.
That's what
yeah.
Are the only known definitive hosts in which parasites may undergo sexual reproduction. Interesting. So pretty much what you said.
Yeah, I wasn't far off.
You were close. What? So they can only reproduce in cats.
Mm-hmm.
That was saying.
Yeah.
They can be passed on to humans.
Yeah. Oh no, I got a detail wrong. It's not the cat is sexually attracted to the rat's urine. It's the rat is sexually attracted to the cat's urine, so it comes towards the cat and gets eaten. That's why it's a parasite. Because it basically lures the prey to the predator.
Oh, so it's actually good for the cat.
It's good for the cat, but it means that it has a weird reaction to humans, and it just makes them weird. They're like, I don't need my cats.
Let's have a look. Fever, swallowing glands, muscle aches. Most people who become infected with toxoplasmosis have no symptoms. If people develop symptoms, they usually begin 1 to 3 weeks. Blah 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 blah. No. NHS UK.
Mm-hmm.
Toxoplasmosis is a common infection that you catch from the poo of infected cats.
Nice.
Or infected meat.
Okay, I got that bit right.
It's usually harmless, but can cause serious problems. Excellent.
Quality. That's technical terms right there.
The NHS UK.
Can cause serious problems. That's
It's got to be a bit more than that.
That's so specific. I love it. That's good.
But anyway, getting off of cat poo. Yeah, so I mean,
oh god.
this. How do you think the society these days is affecting males in the way we interact in the world out there? Because from my experience, even over the last 10 or 15 years since we were sort of teenagers, it's completely changed. You've got all this toxic masculinity and all that, being constantly pushed and shoved down your throat all day long, but they don't really ever talk about toxic femininity or toxic anything else, do they? It's just toxic masculinity. And they're attacking, or I see that they're attacking most of the things that actually keep women and children out there safe. And my point on that is, who do you call for protection when something goes wrong? It's the masculine guy. You're not going to call the feminine guy because he's just going to get beaten up or cry along with you. Like, he's not going to do anything to help, is he? And in a way, the attack on masculinity, I see it actually making everybody around weaker and actually less safe. Do you know what I mean? Because the worst atrocities carried out in human history are by weak men, aren't they?
I think now, certainly, because we've evolved as a species away from warfare, which relied upon the swing of the sword, whereas now it's a push of a button. So the standard to be a warrior has drastically diminished over time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're actually getting less and less qualified men who understand death and conflict are the ones who are in charge of it. Because if you go back to Genghis Khan, you were a savage, or you got your head chopped off and made into a pyramid.
That were your choices.
Yeah. Whereas, and so you had no choice if you were to survive but to become a barbarian.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have had, Genghis Khan, the might of the Roman Empire, even, the British feudal kings, like Robin Hood's lots, savages living out in the woods for their whole lives, just preying on the rich people. Whereas now, you can be old, fat, and a cripple, or dying of pancreatic cancer, and you can own nukes.
Yeah.
So it's
and have that power to.
Yeah. So the physical requirements to have power to, life or death over other people has gone. The threshold has gone so much lower. Which, to your point, if you're physically weaker, you are much more anxious as a person. I was listening to a podcast earlier. They were talking about men who are physically weaker are correlated with higher rates of depression, and then men who are physically stronger are correlated with lower levels of depression.
Now, 2 points there. Do you think that has something to do with the fact when you exercise, obviously it releases all the endorphins to effectively give you that gym high or whatever it is?
Yep.
Which makes you feel better, or is it because you're far more confident in yourself because you know if anything were to happen, you've got more capability than the next weak guy?
Both. Yep.
Interesting. Okay. No, it would make sense. Well, maybe I'm getting confused then, or mixing up the masculinity side of things with the sort of like Stoic principles, because Stoicism is more based on doing like we've discussed before, like doing the hard things that you don't necessarily want to do because you need to do it. Looking after yourself, looking after your body, looking after your family, being strong in your body and will, however, not exerting that tyrannically onto other people.
I don't think you get mixed up. I think they're not mutually exclusive. To your main question about men being weak, why is that? There's the point we just discussed. There's also there's affirmative action, which was Article 9 in the mid to late 20th century, which was all of the move to bring women to equal rights to us, which was fantastic. But because there was so much emphasis on that, there was no emphasis on men at all.
Mm-hmm.
And even 12 years ago, there were studies and reports showing how boys are neglected at school. Boys have a propensity for being more ADHD than females.
Mm-hmm.
Boys are more rambunctious, they're more energetic, they're more likely to fight, they're more likely to disobey, to not sit still. Girls are more agreeable, more conscientious, more studious. The education system is built for women, from 4 years old to 24-year-olds. For guys, there are some outliers who work for it, but there's a sizable proportion who don't. Who need like a physical task or something that keeps them moving. And as a result of that, as a system that's geared towards the female mentality, there's a certain percentage of men that will be left behind because they're not catered for.
Yeah. I'd probably put myself in that category. I wasn't, when I was at school, I didn't like being in the classroom. There were certain subjects I had and I took that I really enjoyed them, whether that was based on the teacher that I had that either taught it well, or I got along with him, or I was just genuinely interested in the subject. But most of the time, I think I've quelled it a lot now, but more like the ADHD type, where I'm just hyperactive all the time, just messing around with my mates, like being stuck in that box for however long a day wasn't something that I looked forward to and or enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So the best times I had was sports.
Yeah, because you're physically moving, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as a kid, which is discovering what life is physically, because you're running around, you're playing games, you're trying to understand, okay, what are my limitations as a body, and then you're also in sports like, oh, okay, how do I work with my peers to achieve a common goal? What is the group? What is the group more than me? There is things other than me. Oh, fascinating, because you're exploring and understanding what it's like to be a human, which means I have to be selfish in certain situations in like tennis, or I have to be collaborative and selfless in football or rugby.
Which it tends to be a more of a, is it a male, what's what I'm looking for, like male aspect or male domain, where we, build each other up as teams and develop better relationships by going through hardships together as a team. And as you say, sacrificing certain things, i.e. not getting the try or whatever and passing it to the winger or blah, 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 but you're doing that for the betterment of the team rather than yourself. Yeah,
when it comes back to microcosmic tribal warfare at that point, because it's my tribe versus that tribe in any given team sport.
Yeah, and you do feel that, in those team sports, it's like don't know if it's a testosterone thing. That's what I would describe it as. Is like male testosterone, just like running around,
100%,
going mad, and we're all like on the same team, basically. Like, what's it, like a pack of apes or whatever? Like, like, come on, boys, let's get this done.
Well, look at football chants.
Yeah.
Or even the ultimate is like NFL chants. They've got like the Icelandic Viking chant, which is terrifying.
Is it?
If you hear that. Well, it's like the Hacker, but there's no body movement. It's all vocal, and the whole crowd does it, and you're like, Jesus.
No, just screaming.
Yeah, it's but everyone's just going, whoo. But like 70,000 people doing that, you're like, whoa.
In a small arena.
Yeah, it would be crazy. So that's one aspect. So you've got lower need for high physical requirement. The emphasis correctly, I will add, emphasis correctly on bringing women up to equality. They just have left men behind, unfortunately. And the third one is Me Too.
Yeah,
which
we have briefly discussed that before.
Yeah, which was supposed to be minimizing male activity, but unfortunately has sterilized it. So they've just cut off all of it societally. So and now instead of being these characteristics of a person are bad and they should be punished, it's all masculine characteristics are bad, as opposed to just these characteristics which apply to every person of every gender. It's like, no, they haven't said that. They've said specifically masculine has to go.
You see it if you go to, say, sporting events. I'll use football as an example. When I used to go, when I was a lot younger, between the ages of 5 to 16, it was a proper like male driven activity. Do you know what I mean? You'd go there with like your dad and the lads and all that type of stuff. Everyone would have beers and it'd be all like really rowdy and stuff like that. And then now you go to the football and it's literally like, I think you used the word neutered. It's like it's been completely neutered, and it's not as enjoyable anymore, honestly.
What's the main difference? Or differences?
I think what came to my head was like the male camaraderie, because it's all been quelled so much, is that you don't have that controlled aggression that you used to be able to just get out while you're at football and then go home to the kids and the missus and be chilled again. But whereas now it's sort of, I don't know if it's the introduction or the push more towards women and children going there. I went as a kid, but my dad was always quite clear that, look, sometimes there's going to be situations where it's going to get a bit aggressive, might be a bit scary, but I'll always look after you type thing, blah blah blah. And some will avoid going down these certain places because there'll be fights and all that type of stuff. And obviously I was like, yeah, let's go down there, but not realising as a...
And your dad's like, alright, I'm actually 8.
Yeah, exactly. As an 8-year-old, you ain't going to do shit, mate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's all changed now. It's like, don't know, maybe I'm the problem. but it's much less exciting than it used to be. And that's the point of excitement is danger and excitement have a very close correlation, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
It's, most exciting things have that element of danger where, something could go wrong. But where everything these days is, they've tried to make everything so safe, everything is just so boring. Well, the majority of things are so boring these days, aren't they?
Well, it's like we said, it's like you said last time, they put life onto easy mode.
Yeah.
And that's boring.
And it's so boring, and you get to the point where, again, I don't even bother going to the football now because I'm like, it's boring, what's the point? There's no difference to me sitting at home and watching it on the TV than going there. Whereas, you used to get all the atmosphere and stuff like that, and that's why it was great to be able to go to football, see the lads, have some beers, like all that type of stuff. But I don't know if COVID or Schmovid or however we have to refer to it, had an effect. So I noticed a lot of people, they never came back to what it was prior to COVID, was it? I think everybody just got used to the comforts of their own homes. So they ended up just staying in a lot more than you going out.
Yeah, I'd be fascinated to know. So I remember game day, in our stadium here, the town would grind to a halt because there'd be so many people going.
Yeah.
Which, if you were not in it or able to see it, you're like, oh, this is a pain in the ass. But even if you're just like driving past, you're like, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's like a buzz about it, isn't it?
Yeah, and the streets are just packed with people.
Yeah,
like it's so cool. There's everyone going along, but there's a sense of community, as you say, about the camaraderie. Men, we need these coalitions amongst ourselves heading towards a goal to feel fulfilled as part of our, as a friendship. Women don't need the physical end goal. They need just the people around them, just the presence, and just there doesn't need to be a purpose. And that's where they get their fulfillment, just from knowing there's another person there. Whereas we need, not to say that you and I, if we went out for a drink, it wouldn't be enjoyable. Of course, it fucking would. But as a bigger group, we bond tighter if there's a purpose towards the end, because then we can do it together. Or if it's football, vicariously achieve it together. Our team did that. We fucking won. But
let's also use your point of drinking as an example. Is rarely, if you go out and have one or two beers, is that going to be a really exciting night?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? But when you go out with the lads and you're 9, 10, 12 beers in, it starts getting a bit chaotic, there's a little bit of danger everywhere. That's when it starts getting exciting, doesn't it? And I don't know whether that's like a male aspect. I don't know if women feel the same in that respect. But that's when it gets exciting.
It's tough to say. It is tough to say. There's going out on the lash drinking, like football, is akin to warfare, insofar as you go through a struggle together.
And there's also the male competition, isn't there?
What's to outdrink the other ones?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then whoever succomes first, you take the piss out of.
Yeah, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of, but we all do it.
Yeah, it's very true.
And you can't help but not when you do.
Well, one of the most enjoyable times that we've had is when we had Robbie and Max here.
Yeah.
Because we all had 2 or 3 beers here, so we went out and 2 or 3 more, and then we just went home
yeah.
like.
No, I agree with that. It wasn't that heavy.
No, but we were out for like. We were as a group. We were just hanging out for like 7 hours.
Yeah.
So it was awesome.
And it's like you need those elements of male bonding, and as you said, through a bit of adversity, I think it's where men sort of bond and show their true character to each other and build trust. I think.
Yep.
That way, in how people act, and you see their reactions.
Yeah, because if we take the evolutionary perspective of why men would form bonds, it's like, okay, I need to know that the man stood at my shoulder can help me take down this mammoth.
Yeah.
If this person's unreliable, I need to kill him myself right now, or have nothing to do with him, because you need to make sure that your brothers around you will die for you, and that you'll die for them, to make sure that everyone else as a group can succeed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, we discussed it before about the good men. Sorry, the strong men create good times, good times create weak men create bad times. Obviously, the bad times create strong men, etc. cycle. Now, I can only talk from our experience, which, from we've said before, the neocortex, is that the word you use?
Yep.
It's only fully developed.
Prefrontal, yeah.
Prefrontal cortex. It's only developed when we're sort of 25 and up. So it's only in the last 4 or 5 years that we've really, or can honestly say we're sort of conscious of the world around us in any type of, fathomable way. Whereas obviously when we were younger, it was all just a bit all up in the air and chaos. So my point to that is, I personally think we're in that weak men creating bad times situation. When we think about how good, or say our grandparents, they fought in the wars that were very hard times, but then they came back and created so many good times for our parents' generation, and they were all strong, strong people as well. And I feel like that's probably the safety aspect that's being forced on everyone these days, is that everybody's becoming weaker and weaker because maybe they feel safer and safer, so they don't have to be strong. It can be someone else's problem, or the police can look after me, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I haven't got to worry about things. And do we see that's like, I want to use COVID as an example. Now I can imagine if they ever try to impose that type of thing on our parents or our grandparents' generation when they were younger, they'd have been like, nah, not having it, and stood up and just kicked off about it. But I feel like our generation now, anybody who knows me, I was very outspoken about COVID, but I felt isolated in the fact that most people around me, friends, family, all that type of stuff, sort of just took it on the chin, like far too easily. And then 2 years later we're like, oh yeah, that was unfair, now it makes sense. And it's like, well, where were you at the time when we could have done something about it? Do you think we're in that stage?
Yes. Because I was the same as you, from that perspective, that the lockdowns we had were completely unlawful and completely unnecessary.
And up until that point, we won't talk on this too much because we will get cancelled. But up until that point, it was always my understanding from the science, which apparently can change now. Science isn't science anymore. It can be manipulated and changed into something else. But isolation is like the worst thing you possibly could have done to prevent the illness. Because as you say, when you isolate people, they stay away from all the germs that they're constantly coming into contact with in the outside world, reduces their immune system, makes them more susceptible to catching diseases. But that's exactly what they did. And of course it was fine when everyone was in isolation, but when everyone came back out again, funnily enough, it spiked.
First of all, it was a respiratory disease, which is impossible to prevent.
Unless we all stop breathing.
Because it's in the air. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Living in isolation, depresses you because you're by yourself. We're social creatures.
Reduces your immune system again.
Which reduces your immune system. As you say, not being in contact with things that test the immune system reduces the immune system. Probably eating a lot of shit, you're watching a lot of TV, reduces your immune system, makes you more depressed.
Not being social.
Mm-hmm. To your point about our folks, our grandparents would not have stood for it. Partly because it could not have been implemented, because the way it was implemented like this was because there's the whole media is on all of these different outputs now.
So far-reaching.
It's so far-reaching. It's so multifaceted. Whether it's on your phone, that's on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, advertisements, TV, radio, on and on and on. Whereas even if you just look at our parents, there was one of 5 channels on the radio. And newspapers. That's it. And you can not pick up a newspaper. Kind of hard to not pick up your phone.
Yeah, when it's constantly pushed upon you. But then, I was going to make the point of we've got all these various different media outlets and stuff like that, but they're all either integrated or owned by the same people.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I suppose back in the day when they only had 3 channels, well,
Yeah, I wonder about then. Yeah, well, because when we grew up, I had 5 channels for ages.
5 channels, yeah.
Yeah,
So we had, which sounds like dinosaur now, doesn't it?
but it was lovely because you bought a TV guide at the beginning of the week.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, what's happening this day? I can circle that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look forward to that. It's
You
gonna
have
be
a
great.
routine, you book something in.
Yeah. And then, tell you what, when we got our first DVD player, we were fans. We were futuristic when we got that.
But it's also like, that TV show would always be on at that time or that day or whatever, and the next day at school or whatever like that, you talk about a TV show, wouldn't you?
So Friends is the first sitcom that got to that size. It was so monumental that on the finale was played on Times Square.
Mm-hmm.
So there's massive gargantuan TV screens they had for adverts. They played that one episode at the end of Friends, and everyone packed into Times Square to watch it.
Yeah.
That's never, ever going to happen again.
Now, inadvertently, you've stumbled on something that popped into my mind as you said it. Now, how many strong male role models have you ever seen on Friends? Ever?
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis? Was he in that? I didn't
He
know.
was. He was so good.
There was one bloke, I didn't watch Friends that much, but there was one bloke, I'm pretty sure he went out with Rachel, and he was older and had a mustache.
Oh, Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck, that's it.
Yeah.
He was like
God.
the only person I could think of.
Yeah.
Because obviously Joey, Chandler, and
Ross.
They're all extremely stupid, feminine males. Joey not so much, but
yeah,
he his masculinity was outweighed by his incredible stupidity.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating when you put it that way. I wonder. So Chandler, absolutely, because for most of the series, well, not most series, the opening series, he's the character that can't get any women because he's weird. He makes all these jokes. Most people think he's gay because he has equality. Ross didn't know that his wife was a lesbian, so and then just completely fails his way through relationships. Joey, Joey's a serial womanizer. But his story is actually the saddest of all because he never finds love. Yeah, it's a weird sitcom when you think about it, because overall it's a really good resolution, except for Joey, who is the only one that's left alone.
See, I don't watch it in that
there's no point now.
Depth.
Like, there's no point right now.
Know those facts, but
yeah, I mean, if you were to, so that I can see why you would say that they were not sort of strong men from that perspective. I mean, partly because it's a comedy show as well, and it's rare for someone who cracks a lot of jokes to be considered strong. Certainly powerful, absolutely, because humour is very powerful, but strong, you wouldn't necessarily call them that.
True.
No, it's an interesting perspective.
The only comedian I can think of that's like the sort of macho man is probably Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, but he's like him on stage is like a guy on speed. Like he's just screaming at everyone.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But has the narrative been pushed on us going back a lot further than we thought? Hence my point about the Friends.
Well, I mean, that would have tied in 3 decades after affirmative action. So because you've got Monica's a successful chef, Phoebe's a masseuse. That's
the point I didn't make, is all the women in it are highly successful.
Yes, that's
highly successful, competent individuals.
That is a very good point.
And the men are all the adverse to that.
And the men are all the idiots. So the women are only silly when it comes to affairs of the heart. Beyond that, they are very switched on. Whereas the men are just stupid overall. That's a very interesting point.
And you got the Simpsons. Homer's obviously a dumb shit. And Marge controls and runs everything.
Yeah, but she's
not 100% innocent.
She's much more put together than Homer is, but it's more of a case of she just kind of like flounders in his wake and tries to fix his mess as you go along. Whereas he'd like this stupid idea and she'd half-assed try and like curtail it, but it doesn't quite work out.
However, again, we can only talk from our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about that, has it been like that for the last 200 years or so, or 500 years, however, but women just haven't had the power or the voice to be able to do anything about it?
To a certain degree, we're never going to know.
Of course, that's just a random theory. But making sure we're talking from both sides here.
So the theory being that women are only it is received wisdom that women have only been in a subservient role for so long because they have been prohibited from having choice by men.
Due to safety and obviously the knock-on effect of pregnancy.
It's due to safety and, in quotes, the patriarchy. That's what I'm saying in quotes.
Which we've got to be careful about, because the patriarchy, whether the strong feminists like it or not, if the patriarchy didn't want the women to rise up, then they wouldn't. I'm not saying to all you mad feminists out there that the only reason feminism became a thing is because males let you do it. But my point is, if a huge Genghis Khan type empire came and overtook, you would have to ask us to defend you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, feminism is going to vanish as an afterthought if Genghis Khan or someone like that arises again. Yeah. Considering, to put it in perspective, everyone, Genghis Khan lived 800 years ago, and his bloodline still exists.
Isn't it
now.
something stupid like 1 in 10 people?
Yeah, it's like some 10% thing because he fucked everyone.
Good lad.
Oh, he's a horrific human. He was a horrific human. There's a tale of these Turkish diplomats are on their way to China, and they're going through these. First of all, they were traveling along the road. They had to get off the road and travel along the grass and the woodland part because there was so much blood and bodies on the road that it was impassable. And they were traveling along, and they noticed they glimpsed these snow-covered mountains in the distance. They get closer. They're not mountains, they're piles of bones.
Jesus. Do they eat the bodies as well?
Probably.
Well, I was reading the other day that, and it was only a vague reading. I didn't delve too far into it, but we've spoken about diet and stuff like that before. Jordan Peterson's a massive advocate for the red meat diet, and they were saying that when the Mongolians came up against the Europeans with their corn and all their those types of diets would need to sleep more, and they'd have less energy, blah 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 blah. Whereas and they need to eat more. Whereas the Mongolians would pretty much only eat meat, and they could eat less, sleep less. They'd have more energy, which gave them more power in all realms to fight and overcome the enemy.
It's very interesting because the most commonly reported feeling when one is on the carnivore diet is a higher level of energy and then a sustained level of energy, which is really interesting. Whereas most people would have peaks and troughs in regards to what you've eaten, sugar, caffeine intake, etc. But if you're cutting out everything down to just red meat,
does it have to be just red meat as well?
I don't think it matters per se. I just think red meat. As I understand it, red meat is the most nutrient dense land animal. I think pound for pound, the animal that has the most protein in relation to its body mass is prawns.
Really?
Yeah, it's like 60% of it is protein.
Okay.
Whereas like cows will be majority fat or something.
Oh, I just said chicken.
Again, it's probably closer to a prawn,
yeah.
but a prawn's probably a higher one.
I don't know, if I'm honest, but
well, if you're eating a prawn, you could literally just bite. If you've got the head and the tail, you just bite everything in the middle and just get rid of that, and you're done.
suppose you got to eat a lot more
Yeah.
prawns. That's one of my alarms. Forgive me. But because I've been thinking about it seriously, of just going on just to the carnivore diet. Just give it a go.
Do you want to do it together?
I'm down.
Yeah. Do it for a month. See what happens.
I love red meat. I could eat red meat all day long. I had a fat fucking steak before we came on here. And my energy level seems to be okay.
Got a monster in your hand.
Yeah, well, I've actually been trying to avoid the monsters, and
I know.
you turn up and whip them out, and it's like, oh, go on then.
Yeah, I know. Well, I did text you, but you were asleep, so.
I was meditating.
Oh yeah, when I turned up, I was a little bit late, so I turned up and Max was asleep.
I was meditating first, and then I think I fell asleep.
Mate, you looked so peaceful. I really didn't want to disturb you. I was like, oh fuck.
Well, this is how you know if I was asleep. Was I snoring?
No.
There we go.
Okay, you're still meditating.
I was meditating.
Nice.
You know if I was asleep because you'd have heard me from like 4 rooms away.
How did you feel before you started meditating versus, and then compare that to when I walked in?
Clear. I'm one of those people that if I have a nap, I feel fucking worse when I wake up.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't just, like people say like the power naps. Can't do it. If I have a power nap, I feel absolute shit when I wake up. However, when I tend to meditate, I don't know if you don't know the science behind it or whatever, but I just feel like my head's a bit clearer, my heart rate's lower, my breathing's better, and I don't know if it's the correlation of all of that going down, which makes me feel like I've got an elevated energy level compared to what it was before, or I genuinely have an elevated energy level. It probably makes sense, the first point I made.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Is it the clarity? Yeah, how does it work as an equation? Is it the clarity you've got gives you more energy, or do you makes you feel like you have more because you've got less going on?
Well, bearing in mind it's now what, 7:30.
8:30.
8:30. I've been up working since 6 o'clock this morning. Most people can't even do a fucking 8-hour shift. 8-hour shift is half day for me.
Yeah. Well, because when I was in my psycho stage of just being awake all the time, I remember it'd be about 2 o'clock, and I would lie on the floor, put my feet up against the bed, the wall, whatever, and just shut my eyes. But I wouldn't sleep. I would just do that for about 5-10 minutes, and I'd be like, right, let's go. So it's like a real mini quick meditation, because I didn't turn off. I just got the blood drained back from my feet, just close my eyes, rest that, and just cycle everything down, and then right, let's go again.
So I can't remember exactly the word they used to describe it, and I'm pretty sure this comes from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. But what's his name? Not Nikola Tesla. Who was the other famous?
Thomas Edison.
He would sit in his office and he'd hold 2 metal balls in his hand, not his own, just 2 metal balls, and he would induce himself into that meditative state. And I need to find the word because it hits the nail on the head. But when you're in that semi-conscious state, that's effectively when, he would say he'd come up with his best ideas. Whether he was channeling it from somewhere else, or whether because he'd cleared his mind so much that he could properly focus on what he needed or whatever problem he was looking to solve. And obviously the reason he held the balls, because if he ever fell asleep, he'd drop them and then wake him straight back up again, and then he'd go back to doing the same thing. So, over time, it obviously just sort of forced him to prolong that state for longer and longer.
I think Einstein had something that was. I think Einstein did the exact same thing. He copied Edison, and that's how he created his ideas as well. Whereas he'd sit in a chair, and then he'd sit at an angle so that if he started to fall asleep, he'd wake him up again. Yeah, that's really clever.
And that's the best way to do it. I've found that you try and do it if you're lying down on a couch or something like that, and you fall asleep. But if you sat up in a chair, something like this, then again you're waking yourself up if you move, or you're not quite comfortable enough to be able to fall asleep. And therefore, it forces you to stay awake.
It's fascinating what levels
you can enter that state. Keep going. I'm going to find out what it's called because it's really annoying. I think it's like theta.
Yeah, you've got the brain activity level you're talking about. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Theta brainwaves. Going into the theta can bypass mental blocks and get you into a mental flow, enabling new levels of thought and perception so you can approach problems more effectively. How do you enter the theta stage? How do you enter theta brainwaves? Yeah, meditation, binaural beats, self-hypnosis, flow, isochronic tones, yeah, all those types of things. And the binaural beats, I've used that before, and that's pretty good. It's like, it's a weird sound. How can I describe it? It's like the monks at the monastery, you know, they make those like really weird, like, yeah, and like I think is it the Native Americans? They make those weird noises like that type of thing, which is weird when you first hear it, but like if you meditate alongside it, I don't know what it does, but it helps induce that state a lot quicker. And obviously, the more and more you practice it, the more you can pretty much go into it straight away.
Very interesting. I find it very interesting to know what the comfort level and different physical states of what it does to us. So in regards to sitting down on for the chair there that isn't so comfortable enough you fall asleep, but equally not uncomfortable that you want to get up and go.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain restaurants that they'll make the chairs or benches just comfortable enough for you to be able to sit there for an hour, and then it gets uncomfortable because then it forces you to get up and leave to make you more room for the next person to buy something.
It's a very good idea.
The prime example being Wagamama, which is their whole methodology. Which is
while they sit next to somebody that you don't know.
Yeah, which again is brilliant. It's so clever because then you get it's for what it is. It's pretty damn cheap for what it is, but it's really good food. But yeah, you're kind of packed in on these uncomfortable chairs, which then gets you up and go, as opposed to if you were to go to a certain section of Copper Club, for example, which you can sit in chairs very much like this, or in some like the one in Goring and Streatley. It's got a library section, so it's got all books and a fireplace and footstools and stuff like that, but they charge way more.
Yeah. Because
you could be there all day.
Now, riddle me this. I'm going to change the subject completely, but back onto what we were talking about earlier, because it's been going through my mind and more. I've been thinking about it.
Just twist the microphone and you should see a little icon on the front, little white icon.
I see it.
There you go.
I seize it.
Seize it.
Right. Do we think that the reduction, I don't know if you mentioned this on or off the podcast, but were you saying that the level of sex that most people, the average, what was the fact you said about the amount of sex that people are having because they're not in relationships?
So I was listening.
They're having less.
Yeah, so I was listening to a lady earlier who's a clinical researcher, and she was saying that the 95% of all sex that's had by the population is done in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So hookup culture, it makes up only 5% of all sex that happens. The overall number of people having sex has gone down over the last 20 years, and it has gone down in proportion to how loneliness has gone up,
right,
and how the rate of singleness has gone up as well. So more people are single, less people are having sex.
Now, my point to that was to also tie it back into the weak men in society these days. Now, do you think less people are getting in relationships because men are weaker than maybe they were in previous generations, or they're deemed by the opposite sex to be weaker and then not necessarily worth it? Do you think that is? Let me rephrase the question. Is it males that are controlling this single hookup culture due to the fact that they are less masculine and attractive to women of the opposite sex, or the opposite sex, whatever it is? Or do you think it is the push of this feminine movement that's giving women independence, so they think, oh, I actually don't need the opposite sex, or do you think it's a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of both, because the women that are saying, oh, I don't need a man.
Sorry, because you could argue is that the women's side of thing is demasculinating or emasculating the men, which is making them weaker. Or is it a choice for the men to allow that to happen?
So, an extreme feminist is not would not have the most healthy mindset to the benefit of the species.
Mm-hmm.
A healthy mentality for women to have to be, I want equality, I want to have choice in regards to what I do, in regards to life, I want choice if I have an abortion or not, but I equally want a man. I want a real man. I want a man who knows what he wants and goes and gets it. I want a man who's ambitious, who's loyal, who's determined, who's struggles. So women want everything, effectively. They want to have the choice to be able to do whatever the hell they want, but they equally want a man who is as good as them, if not better, because that's really attractive to women. Because if that man's better than me or as good as me, then fantastic. That means that's that taken care of. I can have this guy's kids and don't have to worry about it. If the really extreme feminists, if they get and they're like, oh, everything women to the detriment of men, that's gonna be a Pyrrhic victory, meaning that they're gonna win, but everything's gonna burn down around them. To your point at the beginning of this is that if the less of the emphasis on men is at the detriment to all. Certain population of men are seeing this, and in a recent survey, if they were asked if they wanted a short-term or long-term sexual relationship, they said 40. I think it was like 48% of men said no.
What said no to what? Long-term or short-term?
Both.
Oh,
They
so
said they don't want
either.
They don't want either, because they're seeing this. There's a certain percentage of men are seeing this crap and then go, I don't want any part of it.
Don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah. The women that are media outlets are seeing the loud voices, which is a small minority of women, and they're going along with it because they're the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
So though it's only a small minority that actually want to have these adversarial relationships propagated and have it that relationships are pushed apart, whereas these are the same people who are like, having a child is becoming a slave to a man, or staying at home is domesticated prostitution or some shit like that. And it's like, the fuck are you talking about? If you're that hardcore,
mm-hmm.
you're either younger than 25 and therefore shouldn't be listened to because this is not finished yet,
mm-hmm.
or you are so damaged by life,
brainwashed,
or so damaged. I mean, there are some incredibly hardcore feminists who have had horrific experiences at the hands of men, and so I can understand it. I sympathise. I really do.
But I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. Is as humans, we've got to make decisions quickly, in situations that happen, in front of us. So we tend to generalise,
yes,
and put people in boxes. Hence why your point about the feminist there is that she may have had a terrible experience with a male before, so then she groups all males into that category as if they're exactly the same. They're all going to act the same in that situation, no matter what happens.
It's a safety mechanism, even though statistically it's ridiculous,
mm-hmm.
but it is. I mean, and unfortunately, I've known people who've been sexually assaulted to various degrees, and it's horrific. It is. Yeah. Because it's effectively a form of torture, and the long term effects in some cases are worse than the short term effects. Which is horrific. So I do sympathise, I really do, but it's what those people need is therapy as opposed to an ideology, because what that ideology has done is taken a vulnerable person and has then brainwashed them.
But therapist, if you break it down into two words,
here we go. and that's why they don't go.
I mean, they should change the name. Like, come on.
Therapy,
Is that like a subliminal message to them?
Have you ever seen the TV show Arrested Development?
No.
Do you know who David Cross is, the comedian?
No, I probably do, but
So he's the bald guy with glasses and a goatee. He played what did he play? He was in Kung Fu Panda. He was in Modern Family, Pitch Perfect, loads of stuff. But he's got a character in there, and he's a trained therapist. But he really wants to be a bit more into the nitty gritty. He wants to be more analytical about it. So he wants to be an analysis therapist. So he puts them together. He's like, I am a registered analrapist. And they're all like, because he's got it as off his door. So they're like, yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we won't be going there. Or, I mean, some people might want to go.
Yeah, I know. Well, if they're going with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
I mean, the relationships between men and women are so fascinating, because if you look at it from a one-on-one interaction, it's if you're with someone who's if not like-minded, then intellectually receptive enough, you can have an incredible conversation about anything. When it gets to sort of bigger levels, it becomes unmanageable, because you're just trying to interact with all of these different types of people. But even if you got 10 guys, 10 girls, you can have a great time just as with the banter and the conversations and the talking shit. And you'll have some, or if we do 100 of each, you'll have a certain percentage of the men have more feminine traits, a certain percentage of the women will have more masculine traits. You'll have
there's a broad spectrum of everything.
Which is fantastic.
Generalize when we speak about these things.
Which if 100 of each is a good way to do it, because then you get a true percentage to play with. So you get a broad spectrum.
10% side and then 8% in the middle.
Exactly. So you get a broad spectrum, and you can value everything across all these different things, whether it be height, weight, aptitude for this, for that, balance, speed, dexterity, compassion, empathy, whatever you chose. And you'd have the outliers in every single variable that you chose on the edge, and then the big chunk of most people in the minute. Obviously, everyone will overlap in regards to different things, but that's where you get the generalization from. And that's where you're like, cool, this is a working model of society right now. And then this is where things get interesting, because if you took a generalized model of 100 men, 100 women at the age of 20, said, right, what do you guys want? They're like, oh, we all want to go to uni, the majority of us want to go to uni, or the majority of us want to work, the majority of us want to travel, whatever. Great, fantastic. You all want to do roughly the same thing. Take those exact same people, move it 10 years forward, and say, what do you want? Vastly different.
Completely different. Yeah.
Vastly different. The men probably haven't changed that much, or maybe they're a bit like, I want to build this, I want to create that. A huge chunk of the women would be kids. Same chunk of people, haven't moved anything at all except the age, and the majority of the women at 30 will probably want kids. A feminist now going to say that's wrong, which they are going to say that's wrong. They're going to say that's ridiculous. You shouldn't want that. But we've taken 100 people, 100 guys, 100 women. The majority of these women want kids.
Well, as we've discussed before,
this is not societal indoctrination, because 10 years previously, it's the same people.
See, I would argue it's the feminist movement, or any type of movement like that. I'm not putting it directly just on feminism, but that's the pertinent point we're talking about at the moment. That is a societal indoctrination.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, as we've said before, is the only real reason we're here is to reproduce. Everything else is secondary. So all these other problems and issues, and do we have kids and not have kids, do we work, gender pay gap, all those types of things, they're all additional to the main reason we're here. And I think, especially as society gets larger and there's so many different facets to it, we get lost in the real reason for us really being. I don't think people even ever sort of contemplate why they're even here. So as I say, they get lost in the reasons or the meaning is for life.
I don't know about you, but I can't wait to be a dad.
I can't wait. Yeah.
No,
I think it's it's one of the, well, I think it is probably the most beautiful thing you can, do, and it really makes me feel sad, really, when you see women and even men that say, look, I don't wish to have kids, because you think, well, there's something going on there that we don't want to, maybe you don't want to discuss, and we won't go into it, but there's obviously some type of indifference there, that whether they don't trust themselves to look after the children, or they had a bad upbringing or something like that. But I'd say to anybody that feels like that is, whatever bad experience you had, it's taught you, as we said before, you can learn from good situations to bad situations. So if you've had a bad upbringing or something like that, this is your opportunity to turn it around and say, look, well, I'm not going to do it like that.
Yeah, and it depends on what stage of your life you're at. Again, if you're 20, choose not to have kids, probably the right move.
Yeah. Especially the way everything is so expensive these days.
I don't think that should be a consideration. I think because there's never a right time. If you're trying to wait for the right or the perfect time to have a kid, you're never gonna have a kid.
Yeah, no. My argument for that, or my point on that is, if you're only on 15 grand a year, you can't afford to pay for your house and pay for food and all that type of stuff. I mean, you can barely look after yourself. You shouldn't be looking after someone else. But if you're a multi-millionaire and you can afford all the best things for your kids, you're an idiot if you don't have kids. I'd have had kids at 20, maybe 22, 23. But if I could happily afford them, I want to bust like 15 of them out.
Well, because they're more. Going back to your earlier point, don't forget the prefrontal cortex there, Max.
Yes.
Kids at 23, that's a roll of the dice. Kids at 26, great, crack on, mate. But for both of us, at 23, were we with the right person?
Probably not, no.
There you go. Which is that because of this?
However,
maybe
could have been that. However, was it because we didn't have kids with them, or we weren't in the mindset of having kids, that those relationships didn't work out?
Maybe because we
were too busy being concerned with everything else in life rather than the main reason we're supposed to be here.
There's a hypothesis for certain relationships falling apart after about 5 or 6 years, being that biologically and I think like pheromonally it's built into us that if we're with this person for so long and we haven't had kids, even if not having kids in that time is 100% the correct thing to do, the relationship will fall apart because the body's like, we'll not have kids, therefore one of us should be, there's something wrong with one of us, let's break up and go somewhere else. Yeah, which I think,
that's interesting.
That's an interesting hypothesis, but obviously it's largely anecdotal and there's not going to be a big sample size to play with, but that could explain why some relationships break up for no reason, because we've got a few, like a mutual friend of ours that we saw last Wednesday and we're going to see this Wednesday. He is no longer with his missus, and I think they were together for a similar amount of time, maybe a bit longer. They didn't have kids.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that could explain them, maybe. They're about together. I don't know. But that could explain that, for example.
That's a good point. I've got a fairly good sample.
Yeah.
Which we won't delve into.
Nah, we can do. But yeah, it is fascinating. I was talking to someone about this, I think they brought it up, or they were very vehement about how, that was it. They listened to one of our episodes about how we're talking about having kids, and you asked the question of, is it selfish to not have a kid? And they made the point that, or their perceived point, that because we suffer with overpopulation, maybe you not choosing to have kids is a good move. And I was like, we need to have a chat. Because I was like, but then I thought about it for a while. I was like, okay, because there's birth rates going down. Okay, yeah. But I was like, oh, that because my initial response was I was to be like, oh, you're being ridiculous. There's no overpopulation. But I'm like, no, there can be overpopulation now, and the birth rate is going down. So there can be more people now because the birth rate builds the population for the future as opposed to building it right now. So I'm like, they could be right, but equally they could not have considered the ramifications of birth rates going down. Because
it's a very difficult argument to have the overpopulation thing, isn't it? Because in my uneducated opinion, now we live on, I think the eighth most densely populated country in the world. Now, outside of London, we're in Reading, fairly big town. Now, if you drive to Oxford, Newbury, or Basingstoke, there is huge amounts of space, huge amounts of farmland all around. Now, if the issue with the dense population was food growth, or we could just build a skyscraper and grow food in all of those. So it's not the food that's the issue. It's not the housing that's an issue, because you could build a big skyscraper and put humans in it. Is it the way that we currently use the earth that is the issue? If you believe in the whole global warming agenda, if there is one. I'm always on the fence with that type of thing, because you hear one thing, you think, yeah, that makes 100% sense. Like the plastic, I was watching that new David Attenborough. Is it Our Planet? And there's an island in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's the size of Texas. It's a plastic patch.
It's just plastic. But and there was these something albatrosses. I was half asleep when I was watching it, but I think it's something stupid. Like only 30% of the babies survive because there's so much plastic just on the island. You see it when they're filming. Like there's no humans on this island. It's literally just like animals, and there's so much plastic washed up. And obviously the parents feed the baby albatrosses, but most of the time they're feeding them plastic, and of course they're choking on the plastic and then dying.
Damn.
So the plastic element, I think is horrific. The CO2 thing, that's always questionable, because CO2, surely that's excellent for trees, and then trees are excellent for us, and that whole dynamic, that argument doesn't stack up to me. Plastic, 100%. That is ridiculous, and can't believe we've taken so long to actually do anything about that. I think we should go back to glass.
But can't vacuum seal a glass. Danger of it breaking. Plastic is more expensive to make because we've got to recycle it or create it out of sand. Whereas plastic, it's cheap, easy to make, mass produce it, malleable, durable, multiple uses for it.
Deadly. Yeah,
deadly. Though turtles love to sniff coke with it, that's for sure. Fucking turtle with a straw up its nose.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
You know what? You know the whole thing about straws, right?
Go on.
You don't know about straws. I mean, like the whole world of straws, right?
No, go on.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay. So years ago, there was a picture of a turtle with a straw up its nose, like all the way up until its head, kind of thing. And this thing circulated around the world, and people were horrified about it. So there was an almost universal decision to switch all the straws on the planet from plastic to paper.
So we use twice as many straws?
Yes. But they're all biodegradable, and there's no straws going up there.
They're biodegradable as you're fucking using them.
Yeah, exactly. They are one of the worst creations ever, because if you try and have a straw and you're drinking something from Five Guys, 3 sips out of it, and you're like, this thing's broken, I can't use this. It's like, because it just gets wet, it's just paper. It's just like, what the fuck? So you're there like, this was one turtle. One. That this happened on. Not many, not multiple. It's not like you're seeing a turtle that's got its neck through a beer can hoop, which just happened. You're like, okay, I've seen plenty of them. There's one turtle that had a straw up its nose. They don't have thumbs. How do they get a straw up its nose? How did the turtle get a straw up its nose?
That's insensitive.
It's like some arsehole put it up there, took a picture, went, yeah, look at this.
Probably did, yeah.
Probably did.
Shoved it right up there.
Well, it's like the news story years ago that published a article saying about it's so hard to be gay because they won't even make a cake for us. Well, they went to the shop that was they went to the shop that was that turned out to be a homophobic shop and refused to make them a cake because the people asking for a cake were gay, and they raised this huge complaint and the lawsuit and shut them whole down and everything. The people that did the people that went to that shop, that was their 31st cake shop they'd gone to because they were trying to find someone who was homophobic.
Oh, right, yeah.
And you're like, you assholes.
Well, I was going to say, surely, is it not a commonly known fact that gay people cook better cakes anyway?
They're called gakes, okay?
Gakes, okay. Yeah.
Gays love cakes.
Yeah.
You
allowed to say gays anymore?
I just did. Don't worry. I was listening to some episodes.
Outrage on Twitter.
I was listening to some episodes earlier about for different things, and they talk about the gays, so it's all good.
Okay.
Which actually,
no, it's the gays, isn't it?
It's the gays. It's a collective, which actually was fascinating because they were talking about the male body dysmorphia towards musculature. A really interesting conversation.
Go on.
Really interesting. So they were looking at
a
body dysmorphia from the perspective of men who get so obsessed with being like this more lean, this more shredded, that more that extra half inch on the bicep width, that little bit body fat, extra half inch, little bit, and it's.
I'll be twice as big.
Yeah, exactly, mate. You gotta be careful. You might pass out from blood loss. But they were saying how it's people who go to the gym obsessively are it's usually because they're incredibly insecure.
Yes.
Or they were lacking in a father figure.
So they needed to be strong.
Because they didn't have the strength in their life, and which
is really interesting, isn't it? Because
so interesting.
They end up, once they're ripped, is other people are probably intimidated by them.
And once they reach that point, they are incredibly depressed because just so everyone's aware, bodybuilders who have the most amount of lean mass and the smallest amount of body fat are about 30 seconds away from dying because they have no water at all. They're nearly dead. And so the highest ideals that everyone has for like a male or even female physical perfection, you're probably dead. Like Hugh Jackman in the Wolverines, he's very close to dying.
Well, like when they got like 3 to 5% body fat.
Yeah, or less. Like the Hugh Jackman's a case in example because him, like in the Wolverine, Days of Future Past, he was absurd and he was nearly about to die.
Really?
Yeah, so close. So there comes a point of delineating returns when if you get past that point of like muscle mass, because you're so close to death because it's just your body's like, I can't. This is not right. I can't keep working like this. Yeah, because you need muscle and fat and water and all of this other stuff put in there. But for whatever reason, aesthetically, we love it when no one has any fat.
Well, I guess it's because you can see
all the muscles and the definition and the thing. Yeah, it's so interesting. But just for anyone who's feeling bad about themselves, just be aware that you may not have a six pack, but at least you're not about to like pass out from dehydration.
Yeah. And you're probably in better shape than 90% of the population.
Yeah.
In America, anyway. So just, if you ever feel fat, just look at the Americans.
Yeah.
But much better.
But then also it was because from like the gay perspective, from that you've got for you and I, we're attracted to women, so we've got us over here. We want to be more muscular than we are. We want to be.
Did you just assume my sexuality?
Oh, shut up, bitch. You and I want to be a little bit more muscular than we are, a little bit more shredded, a little bit stronger. Well, actually, a lot stronger.
In your case, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, little prick. And then the women are attracted to what we perceive women will be attracted to. That we go to this point, and then women have their own criteria for how they want to appear to attract us. For gay men, not just gays, for gay men, you'd have the comparison and the competition within each other.
Yeah.
So it's, but they're also saying that they have the
competition within each other. Okay.
and they also have
Like whilst they're
yeah
in each other.
yeah exactly yeah, but like a human centipede just going round and round. But for men pursuing women could feel objectified, and the male gaze thing, gazes in sight, not gazes in gaze, but so women can be intimidated by that and feel uncomfortable with.
Is that not what they yearn for, though? To be appreciated for their beauty?
We'll cycle back to that.
Okay.
But specifically objectification, not appreciation, objectification. So just seen as a sexual object, not as a person, is what we're saying.
Right.
But for gay men, man A is objectifying man B is objectifying man A, and so on, back off, like back and forth the whole time.
And which one's a postman and which one's a letterbox?
For God's sake, I'm trying to make a point here, Max. So you have that, but then multiply that exponentially and include the whole community
Of gays.
Yeah. So if they're all objectifying each other,
Mm-hmm.
if everyone's on the same level in regards to talking shit about each other, that's why the stereotype for gay men is they're quite catty, because they talk shit about each other, because they still have male.
Is it the male like camaraderie type
Yeah,
thing?
you have that weird
But in a more
camaraderie.
feminine
It's a camaraderie. It's a competition, but there's also a sexual element to it. There's a domination. There's a blah blah blah. There's so many more elements to it. If everyone's on the same level, great. We're all talking shit. It's a good life. You and I talk shit like we just did a few minutes ago, or like on Wednesday we're talking shit, and that makes us better. If you got the same thing with that, but then add a sexual component to it, a romantic component to it as well. If you it takes one person to not be on that level of banter and one level below it, and they're gonna be like, Jesus Christ, I'm surrounded by like horrible people, or just it's
like the more timid people. They don't.
yeah, because you obviously everyone is the plethora of humanity is on a spectrum. That you're gonna have all types of people.
Mm-hmm.
It takes one person to be like, I'm not part of that banter. They're gonna feel like really insecure and timid, and it's really gonna mentally affect them, because they're like,
left out even.
Exactly, and they're gonna feel mentally affected because they're like, this is a very detrimental environment I'm in now. And it was just so interesting to hear that whole perspective and look from that whole point as well. It was very, very interesting.
And could you relate that to the whole sexual marketplace?
Yes, in a smaller scale, because to your point, whereas women, women don't want to be objectified. They want to be sexy, they want to be attractive, but they want to be equally respected as being their own people.
But see, my argument would be that is you're respecting their beauty, or is that just something that I've just made up?
If you're respecting their beauty, that means you're not leering at them, you're not trying to grab their ass to go past, you're not making sexist comments, you're not making disgusting sexual advances. That's respecting them. If you were to be a gentleman and
you're doing the gentleman's way of
so that's being respectful. That's not objectifying them, even though in your head you're like, oh my God, I want you, or I want to do things to you, or whatever.
Yeah, you just don't say it exactly like that.
Yeah, which is exactly right, because it's not really that fun to just say it straight out like that. No. It's more fun to
say it.
It's more fun to be like, "Hi, I'm Matt. What's your name? Where are you from? Oh, I didn't know you studied that. Tell me about that." It's more fun to do.
I'm sure you get this all the time, but you're incredibly beautiful.
Yeah. Excuse me, I don't normally do this, but you're the most incredible creature I've ever seen, and I really need a pencil.
Incredible creature I've ever seen in the last 5 minutes.
But you have that, but then, like with everything and the nuance and the variety of human experience, there are some women who find it more attractive when guys cut the bullshit. Like I had a guy I used to work with who would go up to women he found attractive and go, "Look, my name's Ed. I find you really attractive. We could spend the whole evening with this social dance around the real issue, but I've got a hotel around the corner. What do you say?" And he that worked a surprising amount of the time.
Yeah. Well, no, I've always found that the same. You know, I'm not going to act like I haven't been fallen foul to the other side of things, but the thing that I always found worked best was just being upfront, confident, straight about your intentions without being arrogant or rude.
Mm-hmm.
And also, because it's quick, it gets to the point as well. Like, if they're not interested, bam, cool.
Have a great night. See you later.
Move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
As if it's like a conveyor belt. I'm
Ultimate
not that type of man.
anymore.
Thank you.
I mean, ultimately, it is a numbers game.
It is, yeah. Who is it? Was it Dan Jordan that told us that?
Probably. Probably sounds like something he would say.
But it's a numbers game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Or it was. I mean, and you know, you got to kiss a few frogs before.
Get the princess.
Is that what the women say? Kiss a few frogs before you find your prince
charming. Yeah, I don't think they say frogs.
Yeah, it's a frog, isn't it? That turns into
Prince
charming.
Yeah. I don't think they say frogs.
No. Anyway, but no, you know,
I don't think they're kissing either.
It's the same as. Were we talking about it the other day? Or was I discussing this with somebody else? Is you have to have, if you've only had experience with one person, you can't appreciate, or you have no scale of how good or bad this person is, because you've only had one experience with one person. Whereas if you have experience with 50 different people, then you know, okay, well, look, out of these 50 different people, okay, well, that one had more compassion in these sides of things, or that one and that, and blah, 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 blah. And then once you find someone, it's like I said to you before about finding the goals and stuff like that, is you've got to be clear with what you want or what your intentions are if you're pursuing someone, or the type of partner you want in your life. Otherwise, everybody's an option. Whereas if you nail down exactly the things you want in a partner, you can go out and meet someone. No, you don't tick the box, sorry. Next one. But then when you do find that person, you think, okay, you tick this box, you tick this box, you tick this box. Okay, brilliant. This is the way I want to pursue. And I don't know if that's more of like more of a maturity thing where you grow up, especially as males. When we're younger, all we want to do is. I've got sisters and stuff like that, so I won't get too far. But you're not really interested in relationships and stuff like that. But when you get older, especially when we get into our positions, is you're thinking, I've had enough of that bullshit now.
Mm-hmm.
Is you want to find someone that you can, as gay as it sounds, start a family with and create a life with them.
Definitely a maturity thing, but it's like you and I.
And hassle as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. God.
Jesus.
Yeah. Well, it's like you and I have spoken about ad nauseum. Two of our mutual friends who are just always out chasing tail, and we're just like, Jesus. Like it's hilarious stories, but it's like I have no interest in partaking in that.
And this is the point we discussed about as well before. Is, pardon me, I'm at that age now where I much prefer listening to their stories than doing it myself, because I've done it before. It was all good fun and blah 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 blah. But there's a lot of aggro and stuff like that obviously they never talk about. They talk about the good times and those types of things, and there's a lot of hassle and risk that comes with it. I think we've both been very lucky in our lives that things haven't gone. It could be worse. It could be 10 little Maxes running around somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Which I hope there isn't. No one's come up and told me about them.
Well, and
no one's come up and asked me for money, so hopefully it'll be alright.
Well, and the terrifying thing that these two both say is that the women care less about protection than they do.
I know, it's mad.
And I'm like, what the fuck is that?
It is mad. But is that because they're maybe on the pill or something like that? Or
yeah, it could be.
Or they feel that these days, I've discussed, was it previous pod or the pod after that? Before that? Is it because you can just get an abortion? It's not really. But to me, like,
probably a mixture.
When you get to an abortion, that's like too late. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's another conversation, really, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I think it's a
a
valuable service to have out there for various different reasons.
Yes, 100%.
But I don't think it should just be used just because you fucking went out, shagged someone, didn't use protection. Like, you're an idiot.
Well, here's the thing. I have been an idiot, and I've been very grateful that service was available from with a previous girlfriend of mine where we did everything right, still got pregnant. It was like a few days in, so you're like, cool, but still you're like, Jesus, it's
not a nice process.
Pregnancy scare is it's quite something. You know, your life does kind of flash before your eyes.
And but for that point, because we're so ignorant to it, I think we don't really ever comprehend that might happen. And when it does happen, you think, fuck, like what I'm actually doing now it's quite bad. Do you know what I mean? It has a certain amount of emotional and mental, I'd even go as far as say trauma that will stick with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I was me and my partner at the time were very, very lucky that it was so early, so it didn't make a difference. But there's people, you know, people within my life who've had that process, but later on, and that's
bad.
That's not good. That's not good at all.
Yeah, but you know, as we say, it's, you know, there's reasons to have that service, but this is my point about when I spoke about earlier about the weak men, or is it the overly feminist women? Is back in the day, women wouldn't have given their bodies up that easily.
Excellent point.
By choice.
Excellent point.
But now, because I assume they're brought up with the pill and the freedom that, you know, if anything did happen, they could just get rid of it, which is a horrible thing to say, but that's effectively what it is they're less socially conscious of not being promiscuous, the opposite of that, of being more pure. It's not the right word, but you know my point is that you know the social responsibility is much easier to overcome than it would have been 50, 100, 500 years ago.
So whatever the bar is, whatever the level of barrier of entry is for sex, men will meet it. So if you look back in the past of 200 years ago, to have sex, a man had to be an upstanding member of the community. He had to have the respect of the woman's father. He had to have a good job, had to have the right papers, the right education, and then he was able to respectfully ask for that woman's hand in marriage to then have sex. So he had to beat everything that was the foundation for building a family and enhancing the community he was part of. Whereas now, I can have sex for free, and I could be living in a basement.
Yeah, some random bird in the club.
You know, stuffing my face full of crisps and ordering Five Guys every other day, and jerking off over my Xbox controller. And I can still have sex.
Yeah.
So the barrier for entry has rapidly lowered. So what the fuck is the incentive for this man who's doing everything I've just described to make himself better when he's ticking all those boxes?
But then, is there responsibility on both sides?
Yes.
Because it's effectively a race to the bottom. Do you know what I mean? When women don't respect themselves as much, the men are going to respect them even less, which means they are then going to reduce their abilities. What's the word I'm looking for?
Value.
They're going to reduce their standards and how they treat women, because the women reduce their standards and treat women, and it's like they effectively, as I said, the race to the bottom. So they're both sort of not help each other. Where it should be the opposite way around. The harder women make it, the better men have to become.
Excellent point. It's a really good point.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
The better men become, the better the harder the women have to work, and for the men to be attracted.
And we're not saying hard work in regards to you have to. It's
more about self-respect.
Yeah, it's not as in a negative. We're not saying hard work in a negative way. We're saying we're in the same way we're saying to push yourself, to strive to be better, to strive for better. Is what we're saying.
It's like what our point in the gym is. Me and Matt were in the gym. We abuse each other.
Yeah.
Now most people from the outside might think, they're being pretty mean to each other.
Yeah, and no one else in the class liked it.
No, they didn't like it. You know, we'll do the old David Goggins things like, you're a fucking pussy, mate. What was that? You can't do shit. And knowing, obviously, because we're mates and stuff like that, that would motivate him to go further.
I was fucking furious.
Yeah, and then he'd beat the bar I set, and then I'd be like, fuck this, like now I've got to beat that bar.
Yeah.
And without each other, we never would even got to the first level.
Yeah,
because I wanted to. I don't want to use the word show off because it's not really showing off, is it? But is it showing off, or is it just being like, look, I can do this, mate. Go on, fucking challenge me.
Well, and it was,
and you beat it, and I'm like, fuck this bitch.
Well, and also it was doubly valuable for me because that was an exercise, that specific exercise I hadn't done before, and you.
I hate that exercise.
Oh yeah, I know.
Those lunges, anyone fucking hate lunges.
Reverse weighted lunges, Jesus Christ. And so because of that, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna. I didn't think I was capable of much, but you lighting that fire underneath me made me do more than I thought I was capable of. Yeah. Because it's a brand new exercise, and I was like, oh shit, I have way more in the tank than I thought I did, because you lit that fire.
Well, I think you said before, isn't it? It's David Goggins, I'm pretty sure, that said that once you get to that point where you think you're done, you're only 40%.
Yeah.
You got another 60%, so
keeps on going.
Stop being a fucking pussy.
Yeah.
I was listening to a thing earlier today, and it was of Joe Rogan, and I think it was saying like, don't listen to that little bitch in your head or whatever. Yeah,
you get it together, bitch. Yeah. He conquers that bitch, the inner bitch every day.
The inner bitch.
The inner bitch.
Yeah. Get rid of that inner bitch. Like,
it's so good.
It's brilliant. But I think, it's going back to my point about the males and females. It's amazing that it's not pushed more in society.
What?
I think it's more pushed the other way. Female promiscuity, which reduces the standards for men, which then vice versa reduces the standard for women, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot going back to your single argument, which is mad. When you said that, I never really comprehended it. Is that 5% of the market, the sexual marketplace, is hookups, so 95% is in relationships, and you'd think the people that want to go out and have sex, they'd rather be in a relationship so they get more sex.
You'd think.
But they don't, is it? But then does that come down to then like a confidence thing, either overconfidence or underconfidence, where they think, I probably couldn't get with that girl or whatever, or couldn't get with that bloke, so I'm underconfident, or the overconfidence, I can do better than that, like blah blah blah.
That and the guys that are retreating from the sexual marketplace are the ones who are, delta level males.
What's delta? That's like
A, B, C, D. So alpha, beta, I can't remember, theta, delta. So you're coming down.
Cuck.
Yeah.
Delta.
That sort of thing, yeah. Yeah, exactly, cuck. Yeah, alpha, beta, cuck, delta.
To delta, you're below a cuck. If you're a delta, that's a fucking insult. Right?
I love it because highbrow Latin and then just cuck. But yeah, no, those are the ones who are socially awkward, or they physical disability, they'd be asthmatic, they've got poor eyesight. They're the ones who have been bullied a lot when they were kids. That would
be peak, and
they're the ones that are pulling themselves away from these societies because they
which is understandable.
It is completely understandable.
We have to say, we're fairly lucky in that respect that we don't have any.
100%.
Extreme.
I mean, with a minor roll on my back, so you can't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's why I'm like this all the time. But yeah, we are incredibly fortunate in that respect. And those are the people that
turn out to be mass murderers.
Well, I would hope. Well, hopefully not. But I would hope that would benefit from outputs like ours, who would be encouraging.
Yeah, and that's the main reason we wanted to start this podcast, isn't it? Is to reach out to the younger generation that may have been trampled on, or
even our contemporaries, so the people our age as well. Because I don't know what the equivalent is for women, but I know how to improve a man.
Yeah, 100%.
I know the majority of things, if not all the things, to make a man better, and I know how to do that.
Although this is a very unpopular opinion, but unfortunately it's natural fact. There's this rule of men who have done nothing up until this point, you might be 30 or whatever like that, is you can turn around and change this quickly if you you do all the right things, like we say, set some hard goals, go to the gym, work out, push yourself forward to be the best person you possibly could be, so you become attractive to women. But the point I was trying to make is women's peak sexual value is what, 18 to 25?
I think it's a bit. I think it's like 20 to 30 now.
Is it 20 to 30? Has that changed?
Yeah.
It's always been 16 to 25.
If we're looking from like,
Or
are you talking about biologically or societally?
I think there's probably two figures there. Biologically, it's 18 to 25.
Yeah.
And then for males, it's 25 to 55. So males have got a good 30 years of sexual value in the marketplace, whereas women have only got a short period of time. So, although we start a lot later, for males, we start at
We last
25.
longer.
We last longer, exactly. Not all males, but
Yes.
but for my point on that is,
spoken by Quick Draw Max. Go
exactly, yeah. 30 seconds is pretty long, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Oh, when I get there, I'll double my world record.
Yeah. Well. Hey mate, it means you can go again in half an hour. It's all good.
Exactly, yeah.
There you
Half an
go.
hour.
Fine. 20 minutes.
Yeah. But no, yeah. My point is that although society these days is trampling all over men, is once you make that decision to be a better person for yourself, your family, your community, the people around you, is you would then become attractive to the opposite sex or the same sex if you're that way inclined. But you've got to make the conscious decision to do it yourself. No one else is going to do it. If you just sit there and be a little pussy and just let the world beat the shit out of you, then you're wasting your own time. Whereas if you get up, pull your socks up, and just fucking get on with it. Life's fucking hard. Life is hard. I'm not going to lie. It's shit for, I'd say 100% of males. Maybe 95% of males.
Well, life is fucking hard for every person on the planet. It's just how you, varying degrees, and just how you choose to deal with it.
Yeah, and how you choose to perceive it.
Yes, very important.
And that sounds like a negative perception of the world, but I choose to see it as it's fucking hard and it's shit, but doing nothing about it is just going to keep it shit. Whereas you've got the opportunity through your own choices and mindset to change that into something that's great for yourself and your family.
I would say that life is hard and shit. Do nothing about it makes it harder and worse.
Whereas you can make it a bit better each day by pushing forward.
Wonderful note to end on, my friend.
Isn't it? Well, thank you very much to everyone out there for joining. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next instalment.
Thank you very much, guys.
Take care.